Namaskar and welcome to episode number 1 of Understanding Storytelling podcast. How do I proceed is the question I asked myself yesterday after the beautiful start of the process of writing about the fictional world that I'm planning to create. I realized that there are some things because the fact is, I am imagining a world where there is some technological breakthrough that changes the political landscape, the landscape of um, the landscape of the world, the landscape of economics, the way we interact with others is changed. So there are so many interesting stories that can come out of it, except any story that I start needs to have as a research phase of it include me doing all the background story points and how do I explain it? So let's see what are the ways in which I can start to see how to make fiction. That's a strange sentence. So there are these story ideas. Number one is I wrote down some story ideas yesterday, and this is what I want to discuss in the podcast today. Number one is a baby is born and slowly goes through this world. First, as I decided that this technology is going to be used not on the kids but after a certain time, maybe after puberty, maybe when they turn 14 or 13 or something like that. So the first story can just be from the point of view of a baby who's born, not a baby, I mean like a maybe the first time they come across this technology. Before that, it's just a world like us, right? And then they go through that process of joining with the hive mind and getting a chance to choose the hive mind. Just like a religion, your parents, most people will choose their parents' religion, their parents' hive mind. But some people will think that there are better hive minds out there, and maybe I can join those hive minds, and what kind of conflicts that can happen through that. Because yeah, the story needs some conflict, right? Isn't that what I've learned from all the storytelling workshops? I haven't done any workshops, but like interviews of storytellers explaining what are the building blocks of a story. There has to be some. Does there have to be a conflict? Not necessarily a conflict, just some character decision point, some dilemma, some ambiguity, moral ambiguity. That's interesting. Otherwise, how is a story interesting of everything going smoothly? And then that's more like a documentary of something which goes on in our world, like an ad for like a 1960s article in Science magazine of the how the world will look like in the year 2000. Those old retro futuristic stories, not even stories, just essays by people, by futurists. I don't want to do that. That's not my aim. I'm not planning to create an essay on what is possible in this technology, with whatever technology I'm thinking of. I want to create some stories in it. some characters, time, and place. These three things are required: place, time, and characters. Right, for a story. So this one idea of a baby being born and slowly going through this process of looking at people go through that. But to fill those details, to fill all these details, I need to work them out before even starting the story, before even writing one line of the story. I need to have all the background worked out properly. The second idea is the political changes that happen starting from the creation of the first hive mind, and how did it form with minimal conflict, or whatever conflict that happened. That's a story. That's an interesting story. A political change. That's a big story. That will take a lot more understanding of politics and economics, and the way technology affects the new. Maybe I should read something. I I have come across the After On podcast with who's the writer of the After On series. The After On podcast is this podcast, which started as a companion podcast for a science fiction novel called After On. And this guy, what's his name? I should know this name. Let me just check what the name of this podcast is. Rob Reed. Rob Reed is the guy who made, and he has very interesting interviews. Now he has a interview podcast running permanently apart from the novel, but it started as a companion of the novel. And maybe I should read that. Maybe I'll put it on the to-do list to have that as one of the research points, just to see what kind of research is required even to write a simple anthological story, just a small character going through some conflict. What else? What ideas do I have? Well, I think a great point to start is to figure out, to map out the details of this technology that I'm even thinking of. Right? What is this technology of connecting these minds? What is this? What are the mechanics of it? Maybe a lot of stories will come out of the mechanics of this. So what is the mechanics? What are the mechanics of this technology? Well, I came across David Eagleman's work, which is technology for deaf people to hear. How? They wear a vest. The vest is made with embedded vibration motors on the back, so that the whole back, your back, has an array of vibration motors. And what happens is the sound, the noise of the surroundings, not the noise, the actual sounds, coming from some person, someone, if the deaf person is talking to someone, their words would be converted into a pattern on the back of their vest. And with sufficient training, a deaf person can learn to hear through this new channel. So it's like you're bypassing the brain's actual circuits that go through the inner ear and go through the ear and through to the part of the brain that handles hearing perception. And because there is a problem with that circuit, that whole network, you're using this other side pathway, which is much less efficient. Of course, the bandwidth is not that much, but there is still, something, some positives. And if enough research goes into it, it can be as good as a cochlear implant, right? So how does that affect us? Well, you can use the technology not just for hearing but for other things. You can feed it any data and have the mind train on that data. Let's say stock market data, or a Twitter data, or the magnetic field data. I have been discussing this on other podcast on consciousness because this is a fascinating thing. But I'm imagining if this technology where you are using essentially some aspect of the mind's learning ability, that it can, no matter how you feed the data, if the bandwidth is right, if there is enough differentiation between different symbols, such that the the amount of information is reaching the mind, even if initially the brain cannot make sense of it, slowly, with proper feedback mechanisms. Let's say, for example, what will be the feedback for a deaf person? A word appears in front on a screen, and there is a corresponding sound that is converted to a vibration pattern, and that vibration pattern then initially doesn't make any sense, of course, right? Initially you see the word and you see the pattern, and of course the next time you see that word and the same pattern comes, the next time that same pattern is felt, you won't know, the brain won't automatically just learn from the first, just one time. It builds slowly, but it is subconscious. That's the good part. You don't have to consciously apply an effort into understanding it. So this is essentially what we are doing. We are trying to use the brain's ability to form patterns in input data, and with proper feedback, make it understand a new path, generate new pathways in the brain, and understand, and maybe even create some perception of hearing. Who knows what's going on? Maybe they are actually getting the perception of hearing when that vibration happens, right? There's nothing special about the ear, that the sound feels the way it feels to us. There's nothing special about the ear is, it's a vibration on a thin, on our what are those, the inner ear, the curtains, kaan ke parde, that's what you call it in Hindi. Kaan ke parde, it's still vibration, and that vibration is turned into electric signals, and the electric signals are the thing that are interpreted by the mind. Sorry, not the mind, the brain, the machinery of the brain. And instead of those vibrations, the brain can understand vibration patterns on the west, right? What if I use that and build something that connects two people together? Two people sit down and try to read, I don't know, just one type of data together, or read each other's data, or EM waves, or something. I don't know what can be. Maybe I need to read something about the EM waves pattern, the gamma waves and the theta waves. If one person can get a feed of the other person's brain, and the other person gets the feed of the first person's brain, and they can communicate through this, or maybe communicate through other channels, I don't know, something to this effect can be an interesting first step of invention, the story of the first step of invention that can start this whole process of creating a hive mind. And with that idea that I've just tried to flesh out, I stop here and I think about it, and I will be back tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow with some more details of what I worked out. See you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.